Welcome. I'm Cary Sweeney. I'm the director of the UC Berkeley Retirement Center. And today we're offering a little something different. The topic is retirement transition and relationship building in retirement, and is sponsored by Beacon Bridge Wealth Partners. We have participants who are clients of Beacon Bridge, as well as UC retirees joining us today. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen real quick, and then right before I introduce Steve, the CEO and wealth advisor from Beacon Bridge. Beacon Bridge is a boutique wealth management firm based in Pennsylvania. So some of you are calling in or videoing in from Pennsylvania. They have 9 people on their team, and they provide a unique lens to help clients make financial decisions, because they know financial decisions affect more than they affect many other aspects of your life. So not just when you're making decisions about finances, you're making decisions about many other things. So in today's presentation, I'll present on the topic of transition in retirement and building social connections. And Steve will be sharing some real life scenarios from the experiences that he has with his clients. Today does not provide financial guidance, but it's purely educational, and we'll be looking for your questions using the Q&A box. So we will have plenty of time for Q&A. So you can feed them in now, or you could wait till later after you've heard the presentation in case we cover some of those questions. And more information can be found here on this slide and on their website, beaconbridgewealth.com, to learn more about their total retirement, total wellness program. And I'm going to ask Steve Kraswicki to talk about that right now and share. He is the CEO of the Beacon Bridge Wealth Partners, and he has over 20 years experience in certified financial planning. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen slides for a second, just so we can see him. Welcome, Steve. I'm excited to have you here and for us to partner today.
Yeah, thanks, Cary. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And yeah, this is an important topic. We've been working with clients around the concept of retirement for a long time now. And, the concept of this has really been born from a philosophy that we call total wellness. And finances are such an important piece of people's lives, but they affect so many different areas of their lives as well, from healthcare decisions to lifestyle decisions, how it impacts relationships with spouse, with their community, and then ultimately finding a purpose and really kind of understanding, like, not only how are they going to spend their money, how are they also going to spend their time? And finances are the intersection of all of this. And so our philosophy, as a firm, has always been to think about how we can provide resources, how we can provide research, how we can provide additional value for clients, not just in the financial area, but in all of these different concepts. Total retirement is a process that we may talk about a little bit later, but it's specifically for those people that are thinking about transitioning or recently have, and making sure that they've not only taken care of the financial topics, but all of these other areas. And for our clients, when we were thinking about, who could be a great resource to speak on the topics of relationships and how finances and retirement will impact those, coming with you and the team at UC Berkeley, we didn't find any better resource out there, that could be an expert in this topic and really provide a lot of value, for your folks as well as our clients. So I'm excited to hear, kind of your thoughts. I know people are waiting to hear the content, so let's jump right in and get started.
Awesome. Thanks. Wonderful. So I'm going to hit the slideshow again, and we are right to the agenda. Thanks, Steve. Really. And I'll be calling on you as we go through, because I think you have some really good examples that come up with your clients. So today we're going to talk about transitions, life transitions, and as they relate to retirement, relationships in retirement, and then we will discuss, have a discussion question. So please feel free to submit your questions. We welcome your experience as well, because I think we're still learning about this. Retirement has become a lot more complex than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, with many components. So today's event will focus on envisioning your life in retirement and identifying steps to how now or while you're in retirement to make the transition a smooth one. We're not going to talk about the nuts and bolts so much, like pension and health benefits. We're going to talk more about lifestyle and relationship building. I'm going to review some theory on transition retirement, and then we'll have a discussion of relationships and retirement. So let's get started. All right. So major life transitions. Now we're back on track. Transitions, change is one thing, transitions is another. So transitions typically, like retirement, typically involve a mixture of changes. So each of these changes, even though that are planned for and eagerly anticipated, involved unexpected gains and losses. So it may mean personal freedom, flexibility to do what you want, what you don't want. At the same time, a loss of important part of one's identity. That's their work life. So it may mean shucking off unwanted constraints and also finding oneself in new and unsatisfying roles. So some of what we're learning at the retirement center, we serve 20,000 retirees, and most are still living in the Bay Area. They retired 20, 30, 40 years of working at UC. Is that most are eagerly counting down the days. They're checking what we have is a retirement estimator. They're checking with their financial advisor and maybe one monthly, daily, and they feel a blissful release from the intense pressure of the 40-hour work week. And most are happy right from the beginning. Then for some, only maybe section of folks, not everyone, some of that giddiness wears off as they try to adjust to these unstructured days. So although they welcome the new flexibility, many of the retirees describe unexpected feelings of being at loose ends, which typically can take a little while, 6 months, 2 years. There's no not time on it, but some time for people to adapt. And that can actually come and go. It can be it can be 2 years later from retirement, depending on the transitions that you're going through. So retirees vary greatly whether they see this as an open space of time as a blank canvas to paint or a dark, scary void. So retirement is best understood as a transition, not an event. It's a rite of passage, an event making an important stage in someone's life. So these pictures here are showing this nice, smooth, rolling hill and these sharp edges. So what we want to get to is the left. Even if you've already retired, some of these tips will allow you to kick off a really engaged and fruitful retirement. Planning for it and talking about it in advance can be really helpful. So some of what involves in transitions we've experienced before. It can be rewarding and challenging, and it can be a variety of emotions. You can feel excitement and joy, hope and optimism, excitement for learning new things and meeting new people, and fear of the unknown. Not sure you'll do a good job or make friends. A major question is, what are some of the transitions? A major feature of the transition is change. So you can be thinking about what are some of the transitions that come to mind when you think of life transitions. And here are some of them. Leaving home to go to college, finishing college, getting married, having a child, buying a house, getting divorced, your parents dying, geographical move, changing jobs, and so on, so on. So you have this experience prior to. There's less there about this retirement transition, I think. And so people are left feeling a little lost when it comes to navigating some of these challenges and changes that come with it. Now, change is situational, it's external, it's quick, and it's discrete. Okay, you got your retirement papers, you're retiring. Your last day of work, you're moving to a new place. Those are all change, but the transition part is psychological. So this involves internal processes, ending and loss it takes time in the process people go through to come to terms with a new situation. So you can tell that that's a process. And like I said, it can take some time. I will also say about change, it usually happens quickly. Changing jobs, marriage, and transition can be hard. So this transition has 3 stages. This is Bridges' theory of change, which I find helpful because when you're in this neutral zone, it can feel like it can feel uncomfortable. Say like you're leaving your work and you're not quite sure what you're going to do. Maybe you had a few vacations but now you're like, now what? I'm done cleaning my closet, etc. So transitions involve letting go of what was and beginning something new. In the end, an ending and letting go of what you have been. So, what starts with the transition? You lose your old connections to the activities and people that used to matter to you. And we'll talk a little bit about how leaving work, you leave lots of relationships that you may not continue or get back. In the neutral zone, the task here is to find the significance of transition. This can be slow and uncomfortable. And a lot of times, what we see with people coming into the center is they go right back to work because they're like, I was good at work. People valued me. I had purpose. I'm going to go right back to being recalled on work. Without the process, though, of this neutral zone, what Bridges says is that you may risk losing the thread of your personal development. So you'll be left in an inexplicable change and overwhelming desire to put the pieces back together as quickly as possible. And that's what I mean by people going back to work. So it takes time to and sort of some acceptance to sit in this space, because what will happen is you're able to think about what you're letting go of, your purpose in your work. If you really like to work, how will you continue to work? But thinking about what it is that you're no longer doing, so that then you could fill the things that with your in your retirement that you want to do. So you may want to continue to work, but it may be a different job. Say you've worked in business administration your whole life and you have good business acumen. You may want to use that towards nonprofit support. So there are ways that you can work to navigate that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So the question is, the first question here, what can you let go of, marks the difference between change and transition. Since in transition, we must start with letting go. People may be more likely to ask, what new thing can they add to their lives? Though they may get an interesting answer, they won't be able to use it to make a meaningful transition, because people have to start with endings, letting go of things before they can make new beginnings. The second question is, what is standing by, waiting for you to give it its attention? This points to things that you may have been putting on hold, things that you may have always wanted to pursue. The thing is like a message to you, a message that something is standing just outside the door of your everyday awareness, waiting for you to give it its attention. In Bridges' work, he calls these in the first and second question, because the letting go process initiated in the first questions, the process of making an ending must clear the ground before the second process. So you're launching the next chapter of your life, as they say, has room to grow. So this is where we're going to shift to your social part, building your support network. Because as we said, when you leave work, you leave some of these relationships that you had. We have an activity, I think, that we're going to send you afterwards, where it shows your circles of friends, and how many of those circles are through your work. So a broad network of friends and interests in retirement is one way that can help make the transition easier. They have studies that have shown that people that have a good social network are satisfied with life, they're happier, they keep their minds and their bodies active. The problem as you approach retirement, as I said, is that your social network during retirement will shrink. So let's talk some about why it's important and how to do this. So social connection can help reduce people's risk of illness and disease and promote longer lives. So this is why it's important to do this. Now, everybody has a sort of difference around, sort of how many people they keep in their lives. So that's personal for you. I mean, if you're an introvert, maybe you have one or two good friends, that is going to depend on your type of personality. So, but the more connections that you have can create a sense of trust and resilience in creating a healthier life. So we're going to go through some suggestions on ways. They're very practical suggestions on ways to build these relationship connections and build connections. How do you, strike this up if maybe you're out of practice and all your friends were from work? I know a lot of my relationships are from work, and so I think about this regularly. So let's jump into some of the examples, and then along the way, I'd like to ask Steve to share and sort of how that he is engaging with his clients um, to be able to share some of this. And I'm gonna do we have any questions coming in yet, Camille?
No, not yet.
Okay, thanks. All right. So some community-based exercises. Many of you may already be doing these. I know in the Bay Area, we have lots of Tai Chi. Tai Chi has all sorts of healthy health benefits. It's a slow movement martial arts about movement, and it can be social and physically enjoyable. Exercise or leisure activities combined with exercise are many of them are connected in the community. And many are designed specifically for ease on the joints and socializing, which may be important to many older adults. Water aerobics, a lot of fun. If you've never tried water aerobics, I highly suggest it. If you like being in the water, it's very social. If you want to take it one step further, you can actually become a certified water aerobics instructor. I've got some information to a link to that. Look to your local Parks and Rec, your senior centers and YMCA. Silver Sneakers, I'll provide a link to that at the end. Some people's Medicare Advantage plans actually have a link to Silver Sneakers or a program connection to them. Community walking programs. We had a panel the other week with an organization I work for, ROHE, or I'm on their board, and it's the Association for Retirement Organizations and Higher Education. And the panelists shared what they do to keep connections. And one of them said her hiking group has been just a life send for her. So dancing groups, that I can share some links to that as well, so that you can get up to speed with some of those. Technology and phone-based programs. So there's a couple that I really enjoy referring people to. If you're not interested, you want to limit your contact in person. Well Connected is a great program. I'll send the links afterwards. We'll send a note to you guys afterwards. This is a great program. It's lecture and learning and social connection. It's free. It's online or by phone. I think they still do it by phone, actually. I don't know if they've added a video component with Zoom. And it's lectures. You can volunteer to lecture for it, or you can participate in it. I cannot say enough about Senior Planet. It's a collaboration with AARP. If you don't know how to get online, or you're feeling a little less than, like, we had a QR code recently just above, and that can be that square with all the squigglies. People are like, I don't know how to use that thing. So Senior Planet is free. And these classes teach everything from Facebook groups to Nextdoor, which I think Nextdoor is a great way to get involved in walking programs. If you don't already use it, they have classes on that. So I will, and I'm going to go into intergenerational plan, but I will share some information about that later. One person mentioned in their questions at the beginning that they were interested in connecting with people of different ages. I will share with you Generations United actually has a database of intergenerational programs. So we'll send you a link to that. They fund many programs all over the country and help support them. These are wonderful programs that make an intentional effort to involve both young and old, older people, not just helping the other. There's some of that, but also getting together um, and connecting. I wanted to bring up some because this part about the key to making relationships with all ages, because a lot of you probably already do this. I mean, you connect with your grandchildren, or you connect with people in the community. If you were a professor or worked at the school, you will have a relationship with students, perhaps. Sometimes it can be challenging. I find intergenerational conversations can be a little challenging. So here are some key tips for recognizing how to build these relationships. And this can be struck up with all sorts of people in the community, and just making those connections ad hoc. It's important to accept each other's differences. There may be 20, 30, there may be 50 years difference between you. So it's important to recognize that their generational perspective may be different than yours, and that you can agree to disagree. Establish trust and honesty. Achieve something new together. That's some of the biggest tips we get from intergenerational programming is do something together, something that you can both bring something to the table. Be flexible, treat each other equally, and listen and ask questions. I know it can be exciting if, for me, I love meeting people. And if I get really excited that I've met somebody that I really enjoy, I might keep talking and just not stop and listen. These are just standard friendship connection 101, I think, at all ages, but good to be reminded when you're connecting with people that may be 50 years or 60 years younger than you. So let's talk about volunteering. I'll send you some links, but you may want to start to think about how you begin to, what do you want to do to volunteer? I have talked to some retirees where they're like, I'm volunteering, but I'm so bored with what I'm volunteering for. So before you start, you may want to set some personal goals. You may want to think about what interests you. What do you want to rediscover? How do you enjoy spending your time? What are you excited about? If you're a caregiver, how do you weigh that out to have time, take advantage of respite programs so that you can get out and enjoy some purposeful work if you have the energy. If you're struggling with identifying things, what excites you? Think about what anchors might be keeping you from moving forward. Are there skills or hobbies you might consider as a source of income, or start studying them now while you're working? Take a class or get a book to be able to start that now and start thinking about it before you retire. Maybe something you're interested in but not sure how what you'd like to do if there's a volunteering situation for it. I highly recommend Volunteer Match, and we'll send that link next. It's a clearinghouse of volunteer opportunities where you can put your zip code in, your interest, whether or not you want to do it virtually or in person, and they'll email you regularly a list of options on volunteering. So, Steve, why don't you share with us some of how you're talking with your clients when you're working on finances with them? How do you build this into your conversation about volunteering?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting too, because, probably the biggest question outside of finances that we get when we're doing retirement planning with clients is for them to say, I don't want to know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to spend my time. I'm working. I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards. So I'm just going to kind of keep going. And what we find is that's really important to work through that with them. And one really good example is if we find a cause or we find something that's really important to them that they're passionate about, if they can use their skills to kind of move into a new endeavor, that's one of the most successful things that we're finding with people. So a couple of things that we think about when we do our planning is to think about, not only a budget. A lot of people donate money. So we want to think about a budget of kind of donating to causes, but also kind of look at saying, is there a time budget that you can put in? What of your time are you willing to give to an organization or to something in your community that you really care about? And can that be the thing that, sort of bridges the gap from your identity from work to your identity in this new transition of retirement? And sometimes people aren't sure, what skills that they can bring to the table or how it relates, but we talk about three specific things. What are the skills that you currently have, in your work life. If they're teaching, can they bring those to another organization, or can they do consulting? But we also think about, what is a new skill that maybe you've always wanted to learn that would be good, for an organization? Or what is just something, a third thing is just, what is something that you love, something that you never feel like you're spending time. It could be, woodworking, it could be welding, it could be, gardening, whatever the case may be. Like, what are those skills that you love that you could also bring to an organization? So I think finding that next cause and being something bigger than yourself, that is one of the things that we find most successful to bridge that gap from like their current working life into the next chapter. And so I think it's super important, and it's a really big, and it's so needed out there in terms of what organizations are looking for. And there's so many opportunities that can be out there that people maybe aren't even aware of.
Yeah, it's so true. It's really untapped in a lot of ways. And that being able to apply your skills that you've had or learn new skills, this is great, great thinking. Thank you for that. We'll move on to just easing back in safely. Some folks asked about this, about how do you ease back, how do you ease back into the community? If you're still, certainly older adults are the most vulnerable when it comes to the pandemic. Yes, we're talking about it 4 years later, but it's still an issue for our folks. So I'll say a little bit about that. There's many virtual programs and you can actually choose to volunteer, give more of yourself to something. That's such a great point. Virtually, if you want to look on Volunteer Match and put in that you want to volunteer virtually, you can do that. For easing back into in-person events, it's really a personal choice. I know, like yesterday, we had a wonderfully well-attended 140 people at our open house. And we had the windows open, we had the fans going, we offered masks. There were options to be in different locations where you could, have more ventilation. So look for those folks that are doing that. Ask for in advance. Are they going to have masks there? Are people wearing masks? Will people be outside? Will the reception have an area where you can go outside? Feel free. We still have people that call and ask us about those things. So you should feel free to look for those opportunities and talk with the organizers about it. I will share. We had a really great talk with Dr. Julian Holt Lundstedt, who's a professor of psychology and neurosciences at Brigham Young University, with AROHE, our Association for Retirement Organizations in Higher Education. And she really made an interesting point that when we were socially distanced for such a long time, and this is something we adapted to, and for many, it created a new set point where the previous level of socializing before the pandemic is too much. She likened it to someone who's gone without food for a while, that when they try to eat a normal portion, they become physically ill. So with all the conveniences of online shopping and entertainment, it may have inadvertently reinforced isolation. With that in mind, I think we want to say it's good to ease in, like easing into eating food again. It may be a little uncomfortable. If you can ease in, you can build that social muscle and build that comfort level. So if you're going out, being as safe as you can, and you're still feeling like, oh, I don't know, I'm a little overwhelmed by it all. That seems normal from what Dr. Holt Lundstedt is sharing. So I think it's a really important point to recognize that we may not get back to our previous levels of socializing, but we may have to push ourselves just a little bit when we do decide that we are going to go to a very safe place to network, how we might approach that in our minds and in our hearts. So we want you to start the conversation now with your social networking and connecting. Start talking with your friends, your partners, your family. Just ask them how they're doing it. I mean, you may not be alone in struggling with that conversation, how to start that conversation. And, it's important to build your financial portfolio, but the best time to broaden your network isn't the day you retire. You will build that up in your years leading up to retirement. So it's important to keep that in mind. we're going to move, before we move on to talking a little bit about partners and marriage, I want to go through few good points about that. If any of you have partners that you're working with, any thoughts there, Steve? We can
Well, yeah, I think
talk.
this is, I think it is important, right? Conversation. And so, again, one of the things that we hear a lot, is one spouse may make a joke and say, I don't know, if I'm home all the time now, am I gonna drive my partner crazy, And it's a real conversation. I mean, I know people joke about it, and most of the time it's in jest. But there is a new dynamic when one spouse retires, and in particular, if there's a spouse or a partner who retires and the other one is still working. There can be a lot of changes in the dynamic socially and impersonally that people need to address there. And so we want to make sure that they have that conversation. How are you going to feel?
I hope we get him back. Lost you for a second, Steve. We may have lost Steve for a second. Am I right, Camille? Have you stopped hearing him too?
Yes, I have.
Okay. All right, Steve. If he pops back in, I'm just going to start talking about this a little bit. Maybe you can message him for me and let him know that he's
Sure.
that he's in there. Thanks. So let's talk a little bit about that. Transition from full-time work can increase time together, as Steve was saying, but it also can create stress. Balancing, dependence and independence is one key to reducing strain and managing psychological, social, and economic changes. We got you back, Steve. So I'll just
I dropped out there for a second.
No
Apologize,
problem.
but I just think it's really important to have that conversation, Cary. So it's not everybody does it, right? They don't think about the transition, in advance, and then all of a sudden there's a new dynamic, and it can create some strain. So I know you're going to talk a lot about a few ideas there. So keep us rolling.
All right, good, for sure. So, it's important to make concrete plans for leisure together while simultaneously maintaining some independent activity. So I'm sure some of you can share in the questions and just put something in the Q&A and we'll see it. I don't know if the chat is enabled, but we can give some examples about how you maintain independence while from each other while creating leisure activities together. I wanted to share this one report that we read is a Fidelity investment study that found that even though over 70% of couples think they communicate very well, and 90% think communications about household budget, savings, and estate planning are not difficult to start, a substantial number of couples do not communicate about these topics. 1/3 of the not yet retired couples disagree about their ideal visions of retirement and how comfortable their lifestyle will be. Half of retired couples disagree on what their exact retirement age will be, and over 40% do not correctly know how much their partner makes in income and how much money they'll need to maintain their current lifestyle. So let's keep that in mind, like Steve said, and Steve's firm is different from many financial advisors, but you can look for that in a financial advisor, someone that can help maybe as a neutral party, encourage that conversation among you and ask those right questions so that you are thinking about that and documenting that. So work on enhancing the quality of your relationship before retirement. Now, if you're already retired, that's fine. But enhancing it before it occurs can have a long-lasting impact. This can be facilitated by having shared activities and making concrete plans for leisure. And you can support each other in helping to facilitate as he or she creates some more structure for life and retirement. So if you communicate about this early and person needs more structure than you can talk about that together and set it up. And in advance, if your partner is a little older than you, you know that we're going to talk about synchronizing the importance of synchronizing retirement, but if you happen to retire at different ages, you may need to talk with your spouse about setting up some structure for themselves when they've made that shift, especially if their work was a high part of their life. So marital or relationship conflict is more likely to develop when one partner works full time and the other retires. Now, you may have some opposite stories for us. We'd love to hear those. We're going to get to the Q&A in just a second, and we can talk about that. But most specifically, there's evidence that both partners tend to be more dissatisfied when one person retires while the other may work. This may be due to the roles that partners may play as the breadwinner, or they may feel more socially isolated than the others, since they had a lot of social interactions through work. So couples tend to prefer to retire together, and these findings really drive home that a synchronized retirement can be beneficial. It could be different for everybody, but just something to keep in mind in some of the literature is what's being said. Be honest about your fears. Unsurprising that evidence shows that sharing concerns about future events usually has positive consequences and can help for transitions overall. So talk about what those fears are. Fear that, maybe you need to want to work later. Maybe you're not ready to retire yet, but you should talk about that. No one needs to retire. Many people, especially in the university, will continue to work very satisfying and contributing lives. So you don't have to, but talk about it and help make a plan, because things go better with that. Consider whether your retirement transition may be paired with other stressors, like you have a child in college still, maybe you have a grandchild that you'll be taking over, or other stressors like you're going into retirement because you're becoming a caregiver. So those are important to discuss and set up as much as a network as you can to help manage that. All right, we're getting to the conclusion. It's never too early or late to start the conversation. So talk about it with your family and your partner. What sort of activities are you interested in doing together with them, and what are you interested in doing apart? Where do you plan to live? Building social relationships can be more difficult if you decide, say, I'm going to move to Nevada because the taxes or in South Carolina because the taxes are easier. How are you going to create a social network for yourself, and what are your plans for if you've always been, say, a volunteer at food banks? You may show up at the food bank and it'd be easy for you to dial in, but just think about that. Talk with colleagues at work to come up with a way to plan to stay connected. Get them to put their personal phone number in your phone before you leave. That way you can text them and say, I'm on campus, or I'm at work, I'm nearby, I want to get a coffee. Recognize that they're going to be very busy and have a working life, and it may be harder for them to get away, but I'm sure they'll be happy to hear from you and talk about their potential to retire. So you can be an ally in helping them talk about your experience. Stay connected everywhere, at the coffee shop, strike up a conversation, compliment somebody on their shoes, or just try to start a conversation. Do it in your community, attend lectures, stay afterwards, arrive early, strike up a conversation if you feel comfortable going to in-person lectures. If somebody makes a comment on Zoom and you liked it, personally message them. They may not reply, but say, look, I really liked your comment. Would you be willing to talk about that more after the lecture? We can set up a Zoom time for us to talk. Some of this may require for you to put yourself out there more than usual, but it might be exciting, especially if you haven't done this in a while. So we are going to, there are two things. This is this QR code again. If you don't know what that is, you take your phone camera. Usually it works on most phones. You take your camera and you position it on that QR code until a link comes up, and that will send more information. If not, you can just go to the website for Beacon Bridge Wealth. And of course, you're welcome to reach out to me with any questions if you're a UC retiree. But I'm going to stop sharing the slides, and we are open.
Cary, before you do that,
Yes.
if you don't mind,
Okay.
could you share that for a
I
second?
will share it again. Yes.
So I just, just first of all, I want to thank you for kind of all your research on this on this topic and everything. And you know, from our perspective in terms of financial advising and really looking at things, I mean, we think this topic's so important, and we just stress that no matter who you work with, no matter what you do when you're planning for retirement, that not only do you think about the finances, but you think about how all these other things, you know, interact. We formalized it into, you know, a concept called total retirement, where we take clients through a questionnaire and an assessment, you know, which is the total retirement assessment QR code that you see there. And it just, you know, it's just a good example to see like where people are right now, and like on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about, you know, the areas of purpose and lifestyle, relationships, healthcare, and your finances. It's so important to make sure that you're prepared, because you only make this journey once, hopefully. And we want to make sure that everybody's ready for it and really lives that, you know, fulfilling lifestyle, and is really ready to plan to live well through their, you know, rest of their, you know, next chapter of retirement. So I think the work that you're doing, the research that you and the resources that you're offering, you know, to the folks there is phenomenal. And, you know, we're excited to be a partner of that as well, too. So thanks for having me on today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think whoever you choose for your financial advisor, I know at UC we have finance advisors, retirees have access to that through your retirement savings program, is ask these questions and get them to think about this with you and look for that. If they can't answer those questions, then you can look for a financial advisor that does. Really ask them if they look at the whole package, because I think it's a super important part about, as we've said, building your plan out. So now stop the screen, and there are some resources. We'll send those to you following this event. I'm gonna there, and let's take a look and see. We've got some questions, and so are we okay? All right. You should add pickleball to your slide. Yes. Pickleball. You can really get a workout. It's so true. Does anybody want to talk more about, I think the chat host and panelists, everyone, I think, can chat if they want to. Everybody should have gotten that. You can connect on the chat, I hope. But if not, put it into the question. I don't want to just socialize with other seniors. I want a broader range. Any suggestions? Okay, and I think we got that early in the presentation. We talked about intergenerational connections. Do you want to elaborate any on that, attendee? I don't have your name, but about if we covered that enough, how to socialize with lots of different people. You're welcome to put that in the Q&A. We had some, thanks for the pickleball suggestion.
I'll tell you, if I could figure out how to invest in some pickleball, that would be a good investment. I mean, it is hot. Everybody's doing it these days, so it's exciting.
Yeah, it's true. I hear. You can try the chat now. It should be enabled. Thanks, Ashok. Yeah, I know. Well, I see it. It looks like tennis, and they're sweating. So I think it's popular. People like, you don't have to go as far. The court is smaller. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think staying active, and I think staying mentally sharp is two of the biggest things that we hear, you know, from people, that, you know, keeps them feeling engaged. And I think the question about, you know, engaging with, you know, folks of all ages, going back to the point about volunteering, you know, there's some great organizations that really have a cross section of, you know, of people that are, you know, care about a cause and care about a community, care about, you know, certain aspects. So I think that's one really good aspect, you know, to look for an organization that you want to volunteer some time for, that has kind of a cross section, you know, of people, a cross section of interests. It's in there, a broader range.
Yeah, I think so. To add to that, say you want to, purposeful work in offering your skills. The reason we bring it up so much is because the research shows that what happens when you stop working is you lose some of your purpose, and you lose sort of your reason for getting up in the morning, right? So how are you going to substitute that? How are you going to remain purposeful? And I'd say as a community, we're behind the 8 ball in creating those opportunities. So as a retiree today, a lot of that is creating your own opportunities. But what the center tries to do is create those opportunities, because we recognize that not everybody is seeing the potential to grow their programs for older adults. The person has asked here to make some younger friends, not just exchanging skills. And I don't know if you I listed one program that's an intergenerational programming that talks about how people are getting different people together. The doing something together is an essential part of that. We have a home sharing program where we match graduate students up to live in our retirees' houses, rent space. And the biggest thing other than saving money is reciprocity, that the fact that they are each helping each other. The student is helping the senior or the older adult have money, get extra passive income, and the older adult is helping by providing below market rate rental. And those are some of the strongest intergenerational relationships, are the ones that are reciprocal. If you're not exchanging skills, like some of the ways to make younger friends are the library is a great resource for that. They're all ages in their programs. They're very interactive. You is showing up to some of those community programs that involve people of all ages, and then use some of those skills. Strike up a conversation, listen, accept the differences, establish honesty and connection with people, be flexible, treat each other equally. So go to some of those events that will be not just targeted towards older adults. Hope that helps. Can you provide more suggestions on volunteering? Either here is a link. Yes, please go to Volunteer Match. We don't partner with them. They're a nonprofit, but they're very easy to use nationally. I know people are coming from all over here. If you're a UC retiree, our website has a list of UC Berkeley campus for volunteer opportunities and community ones. In April, we're having a volunteer expo, so look for that, and that's Volunteer Awareness Month, so that's next April. And Steve will answer some questions there too.
Yeah, I'm just putting the website in the
good
in the chat there.
Is there a way to structure your week that you found in research to be successful? Steve, I have some thoughts, but do you have some thoughts on that? Because I know some of our retirees, like, they won't attend a meeting if it's on Wednesday. Wednesday is golf day. They are very they hold strict boundaries to structuring their week.
Yeah, I think about it in a couple of different buckets, right? I think, like, what is the time that you're going to have from a personal and like family perspective? What is the time that you're having for kind of like an educational perspective? Like, how am I learning new skills? Where am I structuring my time to keep myself sharp? And then what's kind of like the community perspective? Where am I actually giving back? And I think those three areas, if you kind of look at your week and say, like, how much of my time am I really, just spending with friends and family, like in a social environment? How much am I actually learning something new and really, sharpening my skills? And how much am I giving back, or how much am I engaged in something that's really making an impact? If you think about it in those kind of buckets and feel like, well, how do I want to allocate my time? I think that can be a really strong way to think about that in kind of those different buckets, so to speak, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I'd say life goals too. I mean, if you like, those are different life goals, right? So different goals that you may have, you may have two or three things. Some people call it their bucket list. I mean, that can get a little overwhelming, but if you have this year two new things that you want to accomplish, then how are you going to allocate your time to them? If you're familiar with Google Calendar, by the way, technically it's an amazing tool to add reminders. It sends a reminder when something's coming up, so that you have that schedule like work gave you. If you don't know how to use Google Calendar, go to Senior Planet. I'm sure they have a class about it. Go to your library, learn how to use it. There's a lot of tutorials online about it. There's a lot out there if you're not a digital native to how to use that. But that can be, I think I'll probably have a Google Calendar when I retire, because structure is super important to me. I have to have it. If it's not an alarm, I'll stay at home and look out the window for 3 or 4 hours before, we'll to move on. So that can help do it. Or a paper calendar, put it up there and organize your life as you would. You're your own project manager. The fun part is you get to put on it what you want. That can be overwhelming, or it can be exciting. So I will put a plug in for retirement coaches. I will make sure to put a link to retirement coaches. You can pay someone, to meet with you an hour or so to just lay some of that out. Your financial advisor can work with you to do that, but you can also hire someone. They're actually trained in being a coach, and they have them specifically for retirement. So if you're stuck and you just need somebody to give you an outside perspective, just one meeting can do, really, just to help lay out. It's not going to always be straightforward. Remember, you're going to try things and you're not going to like them. It's not like when we got our job when we were in our 20s and we kept it for 40 years or 30 years. Retirement is a lot about trial and error when you're not working. So, and someone has mentioned here, after 3 decades of doing research, I found it very rewarding to sign up as a research participant to help other researchers who are often struggling to recruit. That's fantastic. I love that. That's wonderful. And Meetup, somebody has said, events both online and in person. So meetup.com, that's on the meetup.com. That's another source of all ages. You don't have to, you can do it by, I know I'm on one that talks just about AI, artificial intelligence, and because I'm like, what is that all about? So there are different groups you can meet up with. They meet up in town, and it's very casual. It takes a little bit of courage to show up and not know anybody, but know that I think everybody else is feeling nervous too. So you just kind of got to go. Either it'll be a complete loss or it'll be a gain. I think that's part of a lot of retirement because there's no clear, we have work, we have volunteer, those are very natural roles, but consulting and retirement, those sort of things, but it's not clear what to do all the time. So a lot of it is kind of taking some entrepreneurial spirit and taking some risk to get out there. More and more programs are coming up, but it's slow movement to the number of people that need this kind of support.
I think that's all the questions we had, Cary. I mean, this
Okay.
is, I appreciate
Yeah.
and being a part of this. So, I mean, such an important topic. I'm sure we could kind of go on, for much longer in terms of all the different options that are out there. And, I hope people, take one good idea away from the discussion and, tap into the resources that are out there.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we can end a little early. This has been fun. I've really enjoyed, bringing in your expertise and real life examples. And I applaud you for bringing together the total package, the total wellness and total retirement. I think you're blazing a trail for it, and people may see more and more of that, and that it hopefully it becomes more and more of a trend, of having this holistic look at your retirement and your finances.
Yeah.
So looks like thanks so much for being inclusive of those who are still COVID cautious. Of course, greatly appreciated. It's definitely a challenge to maintain social connections being remote. Yes, indeed, Jean. Thank you for that point. Yeah, and just ask. Lots of people are still being very supportive of people and keeping people safe. So, awesome. Well, with that, thanks, Steve. And we will have a recording of this. It'll take some time because we need to do a little bit of editing, but we will likely follow back. I'll send some resources out, and Steve, let me know what else you'd like to send out to the group, and we'll get it out to folks. And thank you all so much, especially those forms for those activities that you can use on your own to sort of think about how to think about your retirement. So a couple of those worksheets we'll send to you too. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Steve. Okay.
Thanks, Cary. Good to
Yeah,
see you.
thanks a lot. Yep,
Take
you
care.
too. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.